Building powerful brands, personal and business success with my guest, Andrew Ford. Andrew is a marketing expert and he's going to deliver some essential strategies for building compelling personal and business brands. You're going to get some real insights into how to transform your professional identity from a simple job description to a powerful, authentic narrative that attracts quality clients. You're going to learn about overcoming professional challenges, like practical advice for conquering imposter syndrome. And there's also going to be lots of strategic marketing advice for professionals with information that is going to suit people just like you. Building trust and community, it's a critical importance these days for creating personal connections and developing a brand that truly resonates with your values and unique offerings. Andrew has a lot of insights on this subject and so much more, including strategies from his book, Creating a Powerful Business. So you don't want to miss this episode because that is one heck of a comprehensive guide for professionals looking to escape corporate constraints and build a business that aligns with their lifestyle and passion. So if that sounds like you, then you better stay tuned for this really important episode of Biz Bites, because we are here for those of you that are business leaders, you're an entrepreneur, you're a seasoned professional service business leader, you're seeking to reinvent your brand, gain more people coming towards you, then this is an episode just for you. Now let's get into Biz Bites. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Biz Bites, and I can't wait to have this discussion today because Andrew Ford and I have got to know each other a little bit over the past maybe 12 months or so, but this is an opportunity for us to delve a little bit deeper into an area that we're both passionate about in brand, so I know people will get lots of value out of it. So first of all, Andrew, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on your podcast. As someone who's the podcast extraordinaire, it's a real privilege and honour.
Absolute pleasure to have you on. And I think, whilst I know plenty about you, let's try and explain a little bit to the listeners. So do you want to do a bit of an introduction to everyone as to who you are and what you're about?
Yeah, sure. So Andrew Ford, I run a business called Social Star, which you'll see over there. And in that business, we are a marketing agency essentially. But what we specialise in is helping information professionals, so people who have a lot of knowledge, smart people, who are in the business of their knowledge. So thinking in accountants, lawyers, doctors, consultants, all of those, IT professionals, those sort of people, we help them do marketing via their personal brand. And because we know that people who are buying those services don't want to be spammed with digital marketing and ads. What they want to know is they're seeking these professionals, but they just need a way to find them and to understand clearly what they do and what their speciality is and how to work with them. But the funny thing is that even though these people are really smart, they generally don't have that information available or understand the process. So we develop that for them and put it out in a way that they feel is very palatable to their professional standards. And that's really important to them, is that they know we work with other, high-level people and that we're, high quality, low volume content, and we really respect their brand.
It's such an important thing. And I think in this day and age, it's so important to establish that personal brand, but to understand who you are and what you're about. It sounds so fundamental, but it's amazing how often people just don't think about it or don't even know necessarily what they are and what they're about.
Yeah, 100%. I literally had a meeting today with a referred client, and she's got 30 years in the IT industry. She's a specialist in AI, and you think she'd be hot property. However, when you look at her profile, I can see that she does that stuff, but I don't know why I would use her services. It's not specific. It's not hyper niche, as we call it. I don't think it's aimed at a particular market. She was a little bit unclear, who the market she wanted to work with was. And that's extremely common. I had another meeting earlier today with an accountant who wants to work in marketing, and she's a bit lost in terms of what her direction is. So even though they're very smart people, it's very difficult to see yourself as other people see you. So that's number one. And then often people, they need someone else to ask them good questions, and someone who's used to dealing with people in their profession who can guide them a little bit on what works and what doesn't. And so, I don't call myself a coach where I ask you questions and you tell me the answer. I'm more a consultant where you give me some information and I'll help you plan a path. And so, doing that for a long period of time, you just gather a body of knowledge and experience. We're doing this 15 years, so, quite a while.
It's really interesting when you start talking to people about some of these things and they haven't ever thought about it. A lot of them haven't thought about why they do what they do. And hence the feeling sometimes of getting a bit lost, right?
Oh, 100%. And I said to, one today, she had a bit of a laugh. I was like, it's, personal branding, trying to do it for yourself is like cutting your own hair. It's like, it's you probably could do it, but it's probably unwise to do it. It's something that, it's, having a, and I've got a coach as well. I mentioned to this person, I said, I've got a coach who helps me with my brand in my company because, I can't see myself as others do. We get too stuck in our head and our own thoughts, and imposter syndrome comes out, and, we question decisions, and we just need someone to do it and have a good process. Because the truth is that any professional service, and I work with surgeons and people like that who you think would constantly be in demand, but they're only in demand if people know that they're there and they're able to easily contact them and get in touch. And so, by working with people for a long period of time, sometimes they just need a simple setup and, a little bit of content coming out. But even doing that can be difficult.
We hope you're enjoying listening to the Biz Bites podcast. Have you ever thought about having your own podcast, one for your business, where your brilliance is exposed to the rest of the world? Well, come talk to us at Podcasts Done For You. That's what we're all about. We even offer a service where I'll anchor the program for you. So all you have to do is show up for a conversation. But don't worry about that. We will do everything to design a program that suits you, from the strategy right through to publishing and, of course, helping you share it. So come talk to us, podcastdoneforyou.com.au, details in the show notes below. Now, back to Biz Bites.
And so, by working with people for a long period of time, sometimes they just need a simple setup and, a little bit of content coming out. But even doing that can be difficult. It's very hard to write for these professionals and adopt their tone of voice and so forth. So we've developed a process that is extremely time effective. So it's a 1 hour session at the start of a process for a 6 months of content, which is pretty cool. So people, when they hear that, they go, oh, wow, because they don't like marketing generally. They don't want to deal with it. They have to have it, but they don't want to deal with it. And then, we just need half an hour a week. And that's it. That's all their time commitment. And then we do all the rest of the work. And even we work with their teams to approve the content if they have that available. And they just love all those things. And the reason I developed it is because I just understand what they're like. I understand a surgeon's working killer hours. They're highly paid. They don't want to spend time doing marketing material. So we take all the pain away and give them what they need to be successful. And it's interesting. It's sometimes simple's better than complex. It's really quite interesting how marketing is becoming so technical with ClickFunnels and, so much technology and AI. And what I find is people have lost the personalization. They forget they're talking to a person. And I have to remind people, I've got a mutual friend of ours who came to see me recently, and they run a technology business. And one thing that they were telling me, all the systems have got set up. And I'm like, when do you talk to them? And they're like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, people just want to be heard. People want to know that you understand them. People want to feel that you care about them. We're still humans at the end of the day. And with all the wonderful technology which assists us, people buy from people. And what we try and bring into personal branding is just authenticity and, being real. And that is more in demand as AI comes in than before, because people can smell a fake. They can see when something's GPT written, and we do everything kind of old school by hand. And by doing that and crafting really good stories and narratives and the things that you can't get from the internet, I can't Google Andrew Ford and say, here's a story from my childhood that's going to be relevant to your particular situation today. It's not there. You can talk about marketing, but the story behind how I arrived at my marketing method and why that's important is the only thing that I can do. And that's great because that makes me different from everyone else because no one else can do that either. And we try and get that out of our clients. And we find it works super well because it kind of, when it resonates with people, it supercharges the algorithms and we get a lot of, responses.
It's really an interesting space, this balance between authenticity and AI. People are so busy jumping on the AI bandwagon. We must use it. And they forget that AI is only as good as the information that you feed it. And if you're not feeding it any of your own information, all you're doing is reproducing the same thing that everybody else is producing.
Correct.
And so you actually, if you want to stand out, you need to differentiate yourself in the market. And as you were saying before, it's the storytelling is so important. I think it's the nuances of storytelling that people forget because it's become a bit of a catchphrase. Oh, we've got to tell stories. But the main thing that happens with stories is the way you tell them varies completely depending on the situation that you're in. If we're sitting here and we've got an hour to talk, then the story that I might tell you is a longer one versus I know you've got to leave in 30 seconds, so let me just give you the shortened version. And again, knowing who you are and what you're about might mean that I emphasize certain different aspects of the story depending on the circumstance. That's not stuff that an AI is going to ever be able to do because it can't filter through your own lens. It's not going to feel what you feel and have all the background that you've brought into a story. I mean, I think how often if you've been out, could be on a holiday, for example, somewhere, and you might be four of you and you're all in a slightly different mood, slightly different ages, all of those kinds of things. And you're looking at something and every single one of the four of you has a completely different experience. And yet 100%. The story is the same, right? You came, you went, you saw, but it's not, that's not something that AI can do. And I think that's where that human nature is so important in content.
Yeah. And also AI, the social media platforms are, if something's written in AI, they're not giving it as much reach as an organic written article. So they're starting to do, there's a lot of software that can pick up whether something's AI written. And so there's, and I teach at university and there's a lot of those programs we have to use to test, the veracity of our student results. And so, a handwritten, organically written article is going to get better reach. Now, that said, we still use AI tools. So, we make websites, we write people's books, we do blogs, we do videos, we do podcast sort of strategy and those sorts of things. And so when we're doing those sorts of things, AI can be very helpful in elements of that. Like, I don't know if if you use AI to create show notes for podcasts. Some of our clients like that, some don't. Website terms and conditions, fantastic, but not the background story of the founder of the company. Do you know what I mean? So it's a sort of time and place. And a lot of people, this is SEO is one of my sort of passion projects because I think that there's a lot of people who do SEO that don't understand the totality of marketing. And so I don't know if you're the same as me, but I got 5 phone calls a week from someone saying, I can get you on the first page of Google. And I actually talk to them a bit because I'm like, oh, cool. For what? Oh, for your business. Oh, okay. So for what words are we talking about? Is it Andrew Ford? Is it social star? Or is it personal branding? Because that's completely different. Do you mean for Melbourne? Do you mean for Australia-wide? Geography matters. And so there's all of these contextual things that I'm sure they could talk to me about, but it depends because, my style of marketing is what I call inside out rather than outside in. So inside out means most clients in my market, professional services, don't need that many clients. How many podcasts can you run? How many surgeries can a surgeon do? How many, clients can a consultant have, right? It's normally less than 20 at any one time. They've got limited bandwidth because they are the deliverer, they are the product. Unless they're selling a course or a book or something that's different. But in terms of their core service, generally they're delivering it themselves and it's high value, low volume work. So if you only need 20 clients, you don't need 1 million people on the internet to know who you are. So instead of going out with random, search engine optimization to get strangers to your site who may not be applicable, because that's what that is, or doing meta marketing or any sort of push marketing techniques where there's a high volume of low quality candidates that you have to filter through, that's actually annoying for my for my clients. They don't want that, right?
Yeah.
So we use inside out marketing, which is basically we start with your network and we get them to give you referrals. So, but how do people, and someone say, well, I've got lots of, good people in my network already get referrals. I go, yeah, but there's a process to referrals. People think that you can't extrapolate more referrals, and that's not true. Because if you went out to, let's not say the people closest to you, but let's say the next, not the 10 closest people, but the next 100 or the next 1,000. If I called them today and said, explain to me exactly what you do, would they be able to tell me? And I don't think they would. Most people, they'd be like, oh, they're a doctor. Or they work in technology and they might be marketing. I don't know. So if they can't say exactly what you do, then they can't give you a proper referral, Because I don't want a referral just for somebody who wants to, do Instagram marketing, because that's not what I do. I want a referral from my exact target market for professional services who wants a small number of clients, who's prepared to invest the time and energy in creating high quality materials to get a good result, a long-term result. And so, I'm very specific with who we want. And so the people who, are close to me, so the top 1,000 people in my network, would understand that, and they refer like-minded people, because my clients refer and hang out with people who are also similar to them, which is also my clients. So inside out marketing, we find for our clients, works tremendously well, but you've got to clearly communicate your offering and do it repeatedly. And the best way to do that is by not marketing, it's by helping. Mm-hmm. And so we find educative content, the storytelling to, just giving generosity of information away is super, it works really well for our target market. It's not for everybody, but for that market, it works super well.
And marketing as a term, I think, has become so generic, so misunderstood, and an off-putting word for many people. I mean, how many times have you, I'm sure like me, have heard people saying, oh, I don't do any marketing. Really? You've never talked to anybody ever. So
you have a website.
That's it. You just show up in the office and there's no signs on the door. There's nothing. People magically just walk in and say, oh, I want to buy from you. You're marketing all the time, but it's such a misunderstood area.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because when I first set up my agency, I tried everything to not use the term marketing. So we talked about communication, but communication got hijacked by PR agencies and, not what, when you're getting into branding in those areas, it's not the same thing. And then you talk about marketing and people immediately assume that you're selling ads and doing all sorts of other things. So it's a really difficult space, but I think that when it cuts down to the basics of it, it is what you're saying. It's about storytelling. It's about the authenticity. It's about the individual. I think doctors are a fascinating group because we all choose doctors for whether it's a GP or a specialist because of how we feel we interact with them. Do we feel good about who they are? Some of us may prefer a male or female, old or young, but there's also deeper. There's if there's some sort of shared value system that's there. Do they understand who I am and what I'm about? And do I feel that they'll understand me? All of those things are so important, and yet that information that's the same for any business, by the way, but they're not transferred across. More often than not, you get these very flat brochureware style websites where there's no personality, there's no sense of who the individuals are behind it. Everything looks the same.
Yeah, and you're 100% correct. Like your, perception about marketing is such a truism, and really everyone's in marketing. Pretty much anyone can do marketing because we always social media. And when because I teach at university, I've studied, did 3 postgraduate degrees. I've been teaching for 15 years. So, I know the academic side and I've got the practical sort of side too. And one thing I see about those differences between the academic and the practical is that young people, when they come into university, they do an assignment for me in my digital marketing course, and I'd say 50 to 60% of them all have the answer is to do Instagram. like Instagram is the answer. Like Instagram, and so they think marketing equals digital marketing equals social media, and social media equals Instagram. Therefore, all marketing equals Instagram.
Yep.
And then I have to remind them that there's actually, at the very basic level, 4 P's in marketing, right? So one of them is promotion, and promotion is every sort of communication medium you can imagine, from mail, letterbox drops, TV ads, radio, podcasts, plus all the digital features. So there's a huge scope of that for a start. Then the other thing is product. And if you're not selling, if I get you leads and you're not converting, there's a problem with your product, or it's a problem with your price. So we look at pricing, we look at products, and not just individual products, but product ecosystems, from like the Dent days. It could be place. Where are you selling your products? You're selling them online, maybe you're better off selling them face-to-face. Maybe there's other places that you could distribute. So we look at the entire business model, because that's actually what marketing is supposed to be. And, the problem is that people think they can do marketing because they can know how to use Instagram and make reels. And that is a form of marketing, but it's not what marketing is in totality. And so, what I'm really passionate about is marketing strategy. And the building blocks of marketing is you've got people with a problem and they want something solved, right? If there's no problem, there's no need for you, right? Then there's people with solutions who can solve them really well. And how do you find them? How do you find each other? That's basically all marketing is. But what people don't do is they don't think about the problems, right? They don't know who they are, and then formulate their product to suit that, and then find the bridge to find them. And we do a lot of physical marketing as well as digital. So we find that in fact physical marketing is actually making a comeback, because people are turning away from social media. They are literally looking at it less. I mean, stats probably don't support it because there's so many people in the world. But if you think about daily behaviours, people are trying to get off social media. Schools are trying to get kids off. And we've got laws in Australia to stop people being on social media after a certain age, right? And so people are craving a bit more physicality because we've had such a domination of social media. So we're running events. We're doing in-person ringing phone, never cold calling, but warm calling, talking to people, answering their questions, doing physical, we call it high impact outreach of things like books. And, we have a cupcake outreach program. We delivered Christmas cookies for a client. That sort of stuff, because it's so rare, is over the top value. Top value. I can't tell you how well this stuff's working. It's incredible, because no one does it. They're like, I'll just hire a meta rad person and they'll just, find 10,000 people and 100 of them will want to buy something. I go, but are they people you want? Are they loyal?
What's interesting is that when's the last time you got a surprise in the mail? The only thing that there are 2 things that you get these days in the mail. You get, well, it's not technically in the mail. You get an Amazon delivery. They seem to happen regularly in certain households. And then you also get, you still get the fridge magnets from your plumbers and electricians.
Yeah, calendars.
Outside of that, that's pretty much all you get in the mail these days.
Yeah.
So when you can put something in, although I wouldn't put a cupcake in the mail, but
cool.
but when you're putting other things in there, absolutely, it stands out, doesn't it? Because it's something different, and you take notice of it, and it's almost back to those original days when there were no social media and all those things, and people would get excited when the mailman came around.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because and my students, I try and give them an aha moment, and even when they're a fashion brand, you go, logically, Instagram's a great product for that, and then I'm like, so how many other fashion brands advertise on Instagram? And I go, everybody. I go, how are you going to stand out? Maybe you should not do Instagram, or do it, but then focus your attention on something else. But because Instagram isn't a solution, Instagram's a platform to put a solution on. And the strategy is, well, what's the creative? What are you doing? And in-person or physical things and digital work extremely well. So I'm going to show you show and tell. Do that, right? That's the receipt from Australia Post for a bunch of books we sent out today. So I sent out 20 books. It's actually to one of my partner's clients. So he wants to do some work with us. And so we're sending out my book, Creating Powerful Business, that I just wrote, to his clients as a Christmas gift from him. So it cost me, I don't know, a couple $100 in postage. And those people are going to get a Christmas gift of knowledge, of a book, a physical thing. right? We sent out Christmas gifts of Christmas ornaments, Social Star Christmas ornaments, which we got handmade, and and so we do these sorts of things, and people send thank you notes. People are like, "Wow, I didn't get anything this year," and you bothered to send something. It's that personal. Like my one of my assistants, my marketing coordinators, she not only writes Christmas cards, she hand makes them, hand paints them. I'm like, nobody does this. This is like I said, I hope I get one because I'm really looking forward to getting it because it's unusual. So if you think about marketing basics, and I love making basics, good strategy, doing something different. So the purple cow theory, Seth Godin, just one of the marketing founders. Purple cow theory. If you see a purple cow, it's extraordinary. If you see a black and white cow, it's not so much. If everybody is doing things in digital, what are you doing that's different? And how do you stand out? So I'm not saying don't do digital. Digital's absolutely needed. Good communication vehicles. But if you send something in the post and they get a Christmas ornament from Social Star, these are for our clients, you're going to have a little bit of, wow, it's really interesting. It's cool, different. Then if I send you let's say that you are not a client, I send you a LinkedIn request or maybe want to have a chat with you, you're probably much more receptive to doing that. It works in unison and it doesn't cost a lot. Digital ads cost a lot. Sending out something in the post costs $2. Like it's but it's creativity. And I always say creativity beats money every day of the week.
Yes. And look, and I know as well, I've had so many experiences over the years with how effective exactly this kind of strategy can be. It was a few years ago now, but I was working with an organization that was introducing a new organization. So it was built on the credibility of one person. And we were trying to get people to turn up at an event so that they could pitch from there. And what we actually ended up doing was we dropped off at every person's place a card with a digital screen in it that had a video from that person in there. And it was such a novelty at the time for people getting it. It's a little bit more common today, but it's not hugely common to be doing it because it is an expensive item. But we were asking for a lot of money from the people that were going to show up, so it was absolutely worth the investment. And I remember sitting at the event, and people didn't know who I was. I was just invited because it helped with all of the background and the marketing. And people would sit next to me and go, "Oh, the only reason I've showed up is because of the
Really."
That's nice. I said, I'll take that one. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it was a huge success. But it was because of exactly what you're saying, trying to do something different to stand out and show the personality. I think that's the important thing too, that the personality has to come out. You can't just do something for the sake of doing it, because, the hand-drawn piece of art, the handmade, cookies, the things that are made that reflect the individual make a huge difference. And even if it is something that is a traditional merchandise piece, it's what you can bring with it, the handwritten note that goes with it. That those things make all of the difference. And you think about that these days. I mean, and we were talking about before we started the podcast about a handwritten note that I'd left for someone. But how often? When was the last time you received a handwritten note?
Yeah, I mean,
genuine handwritten note.
Hardly ever. And I think it's it's a nice signal because it's unusual and it's touching. I wrote, when I was doing my book launch, everyone who came to my book launch, I wrote a hand. I thought about the message. I thought about the person. My cousin bought one. I sent it to her. She burst into tears when she read the message. It's like that's how cool is that? That's a connection. And I think that I don't know. I think that humans need more connection these days. I think we're lacking that personal, touch. And I think after COVID, people really crave it now.
It's funny because I get your take on this. I felt this before COVID, and I felt it got heightened as a result of after COVID, and we're still not quite there. I think there is a real pull to genuine community. I think the word community has been hijacked for a long time because a lot of people would say, "Oh, I belong to the local community." Well, just because you live in the same area doesn't make a community. Just
Yeah.
because you follow the same football team does not make you part of a community. There has to be more to it. There has to be something deeper. And I think that pull towards community, and I think that the difference is in this age is that can be extend across borders, but there has to be something more to it, and building that up and that sense of why you belong and that drive to then eventually want to actually be in person at some point rather than it just being this sort of digital nobody.
Yeah.
That's where I see there being more and more of that happening and creating that. And it's that idea of niching as well, because it is when it gets down to it, as we talked about in the beginning, people do business with people. And when you have those shared values and you have that deeper sense of wanting to belong to a community, you're more likely to go to that person regardless sometimes of the cost.
Yeah. 100%. Because if it's someone you trust, then, that's the difference. And gaining trust is slow and easy to lose. So branding we do is a slow accumulation of trust from your marketplace. And, if you want an instant result, that's not the process, And thing is, we're sort of on the dopamine hook of fast results. I'm do some ads and I'll get 100 people who wanting to talk, who may take my call over the next sort of 3 months. Whereas we don't want that. We want people who are genuinely wanting to work with you. And so we actually put barriers in place to make sure that they are qualified, which people think is extraordinary. We call it demarketing. So it's, if someone wants to buy your service, don't let them buy straight away. Make sure that you fully understand their problems, fully understand their needs, and you are the right fit, because working with the wrong clients is worse than getting no clients, because you don't have a bad experience. They give a bad review. You might have to, cut the service short, give them a refund. It's all you want to have the right people for you. And building a brand is a slow, steady process over years. But I kid you not, once you get there, once you build it and it's robust, you don't have to do a lot to maintain it. It's a remarkable thing. It's an asset. And an analogy I use, to look at the comparison, and no disparaging to people who do, paid digital marketing for certain industries and products, that makes complete sense. And I did do it for several of my clients. Is if you think about accommodation. So, my son's 19 and maybe one day he'll want to move out of home. Probably unlikely. But
good luck with that these days. The kids can't afford to move out of home.
I know, right? Why would he? He's got his luxury pad where I live. So let's say that he did. Then the options are he could buy a house or he could rent a house, right? So let's say he choose the rental path. That's much easier. He's less fussy about where he is because it's temporary. It's financially, he just needs, a month's rent and, as a deposit, and then, that, and to show he's got the income. So it's quite easy to get into a rental place, right? But the problem is he goes there and he lives there for 2 years and he stops paying rent. What do? Well, they kick him out, right? Anything that is done to improve that place over that time is lost, So he likes working in the garden, so he does the garden up, but when he moves out, he's got nothing. Now, that's paid marketing, to be honest. You do paid marketing, you generate leads, you get tips, getting lots of people through the process. You stop paying, Google or Meta, it stops. There's maybe a little legacy, benefit, but pretty much the leads will stop as soon as you stop paying them, right? If you do branding, it's like buying a house. It takes longer to assess what you want to do. It takes longer to choose because it's much more personal, right? Then you've got to go ahead and save the deposit and do all the work to do that. Then you finally get in somewhere and it takes a while to pay it off. But, in the same 2 years, you've now got an asset that's appreciated and you've got some value. And if you do it for long enough and have a really good brand or a really good asset, then when you finish paying it off, wow. And after 10 years of, or more than 10 years of building my brand, I know that I've got a community of people out there who feed me referrals, and I'm very grateful. Thank you to all the people out there who give me referrals. And so that asset that I built up over time, which is not my website, and it's not social media, and it's not any one blog, and it's not my book or any of those sorts of things. All those things contribute. It's how those people think and feel about me based on every interaction they've had. So it's a feeling, it's an energy. And I know that I've put tremendous amount of effort into that brand, helping people for free, working with people and giving them advice, referring them to my clients and friends, and putting that energy in, and then it comes back. And so, but that to me is a far better thing to do if you're a passion business owner. If you really enjoy what you do and you're going to invest 10 years in it, you might as well buy the house instead of renting for 10 years.
I wanted to ask you about this. Well, I don't know if it's a dilemma or not, but I think it's been an interesting back and forth, the personal branding versus business branding, because there's been points where, pull back on your personal brand, go for your business brand, but it seems to be drawing more and more back towards the personal brand these days. And even though people want to scale their business, and even though it's about more than just the one individual, it still seems to be that personal brand is coming to the fore more and more. And I think it is about that human interaction. And it's also, to me, I look at it and I say, well, the value in a larger business in promoting an individual brand is also that that individual at the top can command a higher fee if you want to actually engage with them as well.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to say that. So there's three brands in any business, right? And this is every single business, every single time. I've yet to see an exception. So there's people, there's the business, and there's the products, right? And I don't care if it's a service. We productize services all the time, so we call that the same. So let's start with the products. So if you're selling based on product, like if you're marketing products, then it's what's your widget compared to another widget, right? So if you're a lawyer, and that's we're separating these three things out. So as a lawyer, what are you selling? So you're selling time for advice. So let's say that you need a will drawn up. That's something very basic. So if what you're doing is selling a will, and that is the thing that is the outcome that the customer wants, so you're Googling, getting a will, there's people you can do it online now. You know what I mean? It can be easily replaced by the new tech thing because that's a commodity. So if you're selling products only, you're in the commodity space. It's harder to be found. It's more expensive to be found, and it doesn't work as well. So because you're competing with everybody else, right? That's the marketing dilemma of a free market enterprise where you're selling apples next to everyone else selling apples, and you can't charge anymore, right? And unless your product is unique, you're a monopoly like oil, or the telcos used to be, or you have such a tremendously different product that no one else has it, like Tesla had, a first mover advantage. So unless you've got that, you're basically you're a price taker, right? And you have to work really hard, and virtually none of those products, those companies make above averaging profitability. They might sell a lot of volume, but they're not getting above average profit, right? So then the second part of that is a business, a company. So then you might market under the company name. So if you're, a big company like Telstra, well, people know who you are. And people think of Telstra, then they, most likely go, not very good service, but great network. I'll put my mobile phone with them because that's important to me, or they might not. They might go, well, Vodafone's going to be cheaper. I'll go with Vodafone because of that, but I'll put up with it. So there's choices, but they're not buying it based on any person. That's a combination of the product and the brand, right? Service is a component of the brand. The terms and conditions, what's the history? Are they going to look after me? You mentioned Telstra to most business owners, and they're not very happy, right? So that's a reputation. Where's that come from? Well, years and years and years of experience. I worked for Telstra before. I actually had quite a good experience for a long period of time. So that's the company marketing. Now, if you're talking about solopreneurship, or a small business owner, your company is unknown. Unless you've been established for 10 years and had 1,000 clients, it doesn't really matter much. It matters a bit. It matters. It just doesn't matter as much in your marketing. Then we go into people. Now, at a lot of companies, you don't even know who the key people are, but there is people involved, right? So if you talk about, say, a bank, Commonwealth Bank, who's in charge of that? Who knows, right? Some people will know, but it doesn't matter. What I'm looking at is the brand of the bank and also the products they have. But none of them can achieve above average profit compared to the others. They all make squillions, but those four all compete and none of them earn more than others, right? Because that's the marketplace. So you think about the brands that have a combination of all of those things, right? So if you think of the cars like Tesla, and I'll admit that I'm a Tesla driver. I love Elon Musk. Well, not love, but I respect what he's done. He's a very controversial figure, right? People love him or hate him, but you know who he is. Who's ahead of Toyota, BMW, Mercedes, Volt? Who knows, right? Yeah. So they're selling on company and product, but he's selling on product, company, and person, right? And, he's the most valuable car brand in the world, yet they produce, a small percentage of the volume compared to a GMH or a Ford or a BMW or so forth. Another industry. So airlines, right? Virgin, we think of Richard Branson. Technology, we think of who? If you're thinking of Apple, we still think of, the people who are in charge of those organizations, even if they're not even connected to it anymore. So it has an impact. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but it's definitely part of the process. Now, the sort of people you and I work with, and probably the people listening to the podcast, when you first start your business, it is about 90% your personal brand, because your company hasn't done trading and your product is not established in the market. It's all about you. It's your past reputation that is the only thing, and people don't want to put their brand out there and go, you're doing yourself a disservice, because really what you're selling is you. The more people you get into the organization, the more services and reputation you've established over the years, then your company starts being more important. And eventually, if you productize your services, then that becomes important. For you, if you're selling podcasts, there's lots of people doing that. But what is the niche? What is the specific package and product that people go, I know that particular style. That's the style of that's what becomes valuable. So I'm not saying personal brand's everything, but I go, it's the cheapest, easiest way to do marketing, and it's the most beneficial. So why wouldn't you do it, right?
I feel like I should insert the ad for podcasting. Might do that later in post-production. So we'll see. Stay tuned if you heard it or not. I'll decide later. But no, I 100% agree with you. And what's really interesting as well, when you look at even some of the bigger brands, and you mentioned like the banks is a good example, when they advertise, they fight to build a personal brand because they see the value in it, which is why they develop, themes and stories that they try to tell in it. The classic probably in insurance is Amy. They've given a personality to a person, exactly. and they, Toyota for years was the "Oh, what a feeling" was trying to give a personality, was trying to deliver a personal brand inside of a company brand as well. So the big brands are doing it. There's no reason why at a smaller level you should. Well, there's no reason. You absolutely should be doing it, because you've got an asset that they don't have. They've got to try and falsely create it, whereas you've got it at a small business level. There is someone there. There is an owner that is not that far away from what's happening day to day, and there's every reason to promote them as an integral part of it. It's choosing how you do that. I think one of the hard things about marketing is that, we talked about earlier, a lot of people think it's a dirty word, or they just don't want to do it. And yet that's the thing, isn't it? If you make it simple, it can be really possible. It's what we do with podcasts. It's what you do in some of your things as well. And I think that's an important message for people to understand, that it doesn't need to be complicated if you go down the right path with the right people. Yeah,
100%. And so, personal branding is not new. I mean, it's think of the Marlboro Man. Think of George Clooney with Nespresso. That's personal branding outsourced, but that's risky, because they don't control those people. They, you can, any celebrity or any influencer can do whatever they want, right? So and the person who's the best person to do it is the owner. But you're right, is people will go, oh, I don't want to be marketing. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to, people think, think all bad things about me because I'm being salesy. But that's not done. It's not self-promotion. It's not. Using your brand to help people solve a problem is not self-promotion, if you're genuinely wanting to help people. So a surgeon giving advice or doctors giving advice to people out there who have a problem for free is not salesy. That's helpful, right? The biggest person in finance, talking about the banks who don't have any one person representing them, is the Barefoot Investor, Scott Pape. Now, he's got the best-selling one of the best-selling books in Australia. Not help, factual books, any book, right? I think it sold 2 million copies. That's extraordinary, right? His book. Now, why has that book been so successful compared to the millions of other finance books that are out there? Because it's his story. I mean, it's about him. He talks about his farm and the fire at the farm and this happened and that happened, and it's extremely personal, right? So you're buying into him, and then you're getting the advice, rather than just you could write his advice on 4 pieces of paper, right? But it's the 200 pages of story that makes me motivated to want to do the advice that's on the 4 pieces of paper. That's the key. And so when you're helping people, it feels good, and when you're selling to people, it feels bad. So don't sell, help. And funnily enough, when you help, they want to work with you. So we say don't sell, let them buy. But they're not going to buy if they're getting, if someone else is giving them that advice, then they'll go to them. So this is the style of marketing. I think it works in pretty much every industry. I've had product people who have adopted this approach. We've had real estate agents, we've had insurance people who are in highly competitive industries where this approach has worked. Like we worked in a lady in Adelaide who does real estate, and luckily for us, she wasn't from real estate. She was a marine biologist, and single mum, and she wanted to get into real estate. And they're like, cool. So what we do in real estate is you make 100 calls a day before 10 a.m. That's the process. Cold calls, ringing people. If you've ever done any cold calling, it's not a fun process. Who wants to get a cold call? Nobody, right? And the results are not really good. And particularly now, people block and, So she took a different approach. So I just happened to meet her, be referred. I was doing some work with the Real Estate Institute of South Australia. That's how we met. And she won the best marketing of real estate in South Australia 2 years in a row. Won that award. Plus, she had people calling her going, I only want to work with you, because their values matched her values. They liked her style, and she was different because she wasn't pushy. She went out into the community and she engaged herself in the community, and she was helpful. And funnily enough, when you're not trying to sell to them, people actually want to talk to you as a real estate agent. So it's really quite interesting is that we've got this mindset that we have to push to get what we want. But it's really not that way. And Hector, a guy from AG who we know, had a beautiful thing is be the flower. If you're the flower, the bees will come. And I go,
I love that. I love that analogy.
That's such a great analogy.
Such a cool analogy. It's interesting when you talk about all of that stuff with people wanting to be, people want more people coming to them, but they get in their own way. I get often people go, I don't want to appear on camera. I go, but you let people see you in person. What's the difference? This should not be an issue. There are a lot of things that I think people build these obstacles that stop them from going ahead and taking charge of this kind of what is simple marketing, but it's so important. And I think the real estate analogy is a really interesting one. And anyone out there that's ever sold a house or is in the process of doing one, if you haven't done this, then do this, because it's important for a lot of reasons. So we sold our house a couple of years ago, and we decided we would interview at least 3 agents. We were very open in telling all of those agents, we are interviewing this person and this person. We didn't hide anything. What was really interesting was that one person came in immediately and spent most of the time rubbishing the other 2. That was the reason why we should choose them. And the next person spent a little bit of time saying they're not really that good and they'll tell you lies, but we're better, and they discounted. We didn't even talk price, but they were already discounting themselves. And the third person came in and he said, those people are really nice, but we're different. Our price is at this level, which is actually higher. And this is what we do. And this is our system. And this is why we stand out. And you know what? The other 2 couldn't believe that we chose that one. And I'm sure we got a much better result as a result of it. But it's a really interesting process because the other 2 just didn't read the room.
Yeah,
they came in predetermined what they thought we would be thinking, and whether it was and they thought that they could the interesting thing was that the one that spent the most time rubbishing the other two was the only one that we hadn't even had a conversation with before. The first time we met him was at the meeting. It had been organized by one of his colleagues. So I didn't even know this person. And the first words out of his mouth were, really, these two people are no good. Why are you talking to them?
Wow.
So it was just, but I think that's, that becomes, in the nature of people that they get in their own way.
They get in their own way. And they haven't been shown any other way. That's the thing, is they, in the lack of advice, they're doing what everyone else does. And that's not the way to get ahead, by being like everyone else. So it's interesting what you said. I wanted to raise a point about personal branding, where people go, they don't want to be on camera and those sorts of things. And people who think they don't have a brand, they do have a brand. Everyone's got a brand. It's what people think and feel about you. And you might not have a big brand, but if you're in business, you're seeing customers, like you said, they're going to rock up to your office. Because I get people who say, I don't want to get a photo, I'm going to lose 10 kilos, then I'll get a photo. I go, so you're not going to meet anyone face to face until you lose? Oh no, I see customers every day. I go, people are seeing you, And so we have a lot of tools and techniques to coach people through this process, because we all have imposter syndrome, and we all feel, that we don't want to put ourselves out there as much. And look, I'm an extrovert, so I'm less sensitive to that. But I very much am sensitive to my clients, who a lot of them are introverts, and a lot of them are, don't want to seem like they're marketing in a bad way. And they want to look good online, but they know that they need to be online. It's just the way, you can't hold back the tide. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. And so people, recently I had a young guy, he's been promoted to head of sales for this big company that we work with. So they're a global company. And he's like, I don't want to do LinkedIn. And I'm like, but he uses it for sales, but he doesn't want to improve his profile. He's got this not very flattering photo that doesn't hold him in the highest esteem. And he's like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I go, but people are looking at you. Look at your stats. Hundreds of people a month are looking at you. Do you want to look bad, or do you want to look good? I mean, it's quite interesting. So these are all things that go in people's heads, and I've heard every excuse and every reason under the sun. And 99% of the time, after we work with them and coach them and don't push them, we take it step by step, where people are comfortable from, to the next step where they're comfortable from. But think of us as like personal trainers. I mean, if you go to your personal trainer and you're like, I did 2 push-ups and I'm tired, and you go, don't worry about it. Come back tomorrow. You don't want that. You want to go, I reckon you could do 2 more. Let's just do 2 more and see how you go. And you do 2 more and you go, I feel good about myself now. And then you improve, right? So we're here to push and assist you to go to the next step without breaking you. We don't want you to be sore tomorrow and not come back. And so we do that, and we guide people through this process. And because I've done it a million times and I've worked with people like them, that builds a lot of trust. All right. And all business is selling trust. That's essentially what we're communicating. And your real estate example is a really good one. My mum passed away. We sold her house a few years ago. And, as 3 kids, we're like, okay, who are we going to get to sell the house? And we were going to talk to a few people. And one agency in our area is quite dominating. It's been there a long time. And so we talked to a few of them, and I walked in, and he's like, Andrew. And he knew me because he was in the year below me at school, at high school, in that area where I went to school. And so we had a great chat, and I go, he's the one, because I instantly felt like he would look after me and I could trust him, because I've known him, kind of for a long time, and they did an amazing job, and other people might have done an amazing job, but I don't know them. And so I don't really know if they've got my best interests at heart. And that's
that personal intuition. It's because it made me think of another aspect of why we chose that particular agent when you said that, was because we actually didn't know any of the 3 of them. We deliberately made a decision to not choose someone that we knew, and we wanted to go with someone independent. And the person that walked in the door said, I love your place. I love what you've done here. And said, you must be this and that, and had a discussion with us, like actually looked interested in what we were doing and what we were about, and related a couple of stories, whereas the other people were just kind of ho-hum, and just weren't even, our place wasn't a home. It was just another thing that they were selling, and they weren't really interested in who they were selling it for. And that's the thing too, right, is about personal brand, is that it's your own person, but it's the interest that you show in understanding the other person that you're dealing with.
And mate, you're 100%. We only work with people who are passionate about their business. Because if you're not passionate about your business, this system won't work. If you don't really care about your customers and you don't really have enthusiasm to help them, the process we have just doesn't work as well. Because if you just want to make some money and sell some widgets, that's for other people. Because when you're talking passionately about something and there's a feeling, you can't bullshit that. You can see in people's faces, and we do a lot of video work, and that is worth more than anything. Is to get that genuineness. So when you said the real estate guy sat down and started disparaging people, I'd go, the first thing is to go, hi, how are you going? How's your day? What do you want? Tell me about yourself. Like, surely that's the opening. They don't care about your price. I want to go, how do they know what you want if they don't ask you? And that, what we find, and I find is, and look, I learned this the hard way. When I first started, I felt like I had to sell, and because I was inexperienced and I was in sales and corporate and so forth. But when I stopped from sitting across from thinking about the deal that I want to close and went and sat around with my client and go, tell me what you want to achieve and I'll see what I can do to help. As soon as I stopped selling and started helping, I just got more clients. It just worked better because then they're buying. I want them to say to me at the end of the conversation, oh, that was really good. How do we work together? And then I'll go, okay, well, there's lots of different options, and, give them some options, and then they normally go to the next step, and then we do some assessment, and then we go to the next step, and we work it out organically rather than me trying to presume what they want and convince them to buy it. No one wants that, so don't do it. They wouldn't be sitting there if they didn't have a problem. You want to sell your house, right? You just want to sell it with someone who you can trust. You just want a reasonable result, And if you're going to get someone who's going to, let's say that you're the real estate agent, someone's going to really crunch on price and really, they're not a good customer in the first place. They don't want you, right? I can't think of a time recently when a client, after talking together and going through the process, has gone, I'm going to get 3 quotes. Because what I offer is quite unique and differentiated and special. I'm not call it marketing, but the way we do things is very, very unique for the people we do it for. And there really isn't anybody who's exactly like me. There's no one exactly like you, Anthony. There's no one exactly like most of our clients. But people don't get to see that because we won't open up, and share a few things. Sometimes the difference is that you coach your daughter's basketball team and they do the same thing and you're in the same, like similarities. The fact that we went to school together, the fact that you believe the same things, the fact that you share the same values is far more important than 1% cost in a real estate deal. So, and we forget that. We forget that they're humans.
Absolutely. We could talk for hours and hours, and maybe we'll do that in future episodes and things. There's 2 things that I wanted to ask you before we wrap things up. So the most important thing, first of all, is the book. Tell us about the book, because first of all, I know it's been a labor of love for you, that it's taken a while to get it there, and the book's finally out. And so tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks. I actually wrote a first book 12 years ago when I first launched the business, and that was an arduous experience. I didn't have a coach. I sort of, tried to just muddle away myself, and, I got a good result, but geez, it was hard. This book, although it was hard, was not challenging, if you know what I mean. So it wasn't difficult because, it's hard work, but when you know what you're doing and you're enjoying the process, it's actually very rewarding. So it took me a year from get-go to doing our book launch a couple of weeks ago, called Creating a Powerful Business. It's basically everything I've learned over 12 years of doing this for clients about how to start and scale a business. It's actually aimed at corporate escapees. So for small solopreneurs, individuals who want to start a business and scale it to some degree. I'm going to write another book for our bigger business clients in future. But this was a major product, and it really represents the thing I love to do the most, which is help an individual find their passion. Because you probably see this a lot as well, mate, that I get a lot of people who work for big companies or for other people for a long period of time, and they've done it for the honourable reasons of supporting a family, or to pay off the house, or to maybe just because they think they should. But then they reach a point in their lives and like, I don't want to do that anymore, and it's time for me time. And that could be at any age. I had a 30-year-old downstairs today who used to be an accountant, doesn't want to do accounting more, wants to do something different. And so, it was my first meeting with her. She's a friend of a friend. And I gave her a book and I said, it's all in here. You can go do it yourself if you want. Yeah, it's literally every step in the process in quite a lot of detail. But most people find that challenging still, and so they want some assistance. And so generally they'll give me a call and we'll, work out a way to assist them through that process. And we're going to run a group coaching program coming up soon called Bob Build Your Own Business, which I used to teach, and I've started a lot of businesses with it, but I'm bringing it back post-COVID because there's just people that keep asking me to do it. So the book is that representation of basically how to figure out what you want to do, make sure it's aligned to your values, your lifestyle, your passion, your future. It's going to give you what you want, income-wise, time-wise, and then a really robust process to do it. I've done marketing for a long time, but not only that, I've done a lot of business stuff, entrepreneurship and sort of more commercial areas. So it's a bit of that, but it's mostly the marketing process. And, the truth is that if you don't know how to get clients, then it's really arduous to start a small business because, funnily enough, without any money, it becomes quite difficult. So we focus and lean in heavy on that part of it. And we talk about productization and other things, but we'll leave the business consultancy to your accountants or your business advisors. And it's a comprehensive process of which you can get elements delivered by whoever you want. You do podcasts, you might have someone who writes blogs for you. Your sister might be expert web designer. So it doesn't mean you have to do everything with a certain person. It's just a system. And if you run through the system, I know that in 12 weeks, I can get you to start a business and get your first client from nothing, because I've done it before. And I've got lots of testimonials from people who have done the same. So the book is the sort of centerpiece of that and just getting everything out of my head. And it's kind of cool because I worked with my cousin who's been in publishing for 35 years and he was my coach. Because everyone needs a coach, right? And
absolutely,
yeah, it's a labour of love, and it's got a lot of me in there. And this is the only thing I was most nervous about is, I start with my journey, and I wrestled with that quite a bit because I've had an unusual upbringing, and we've all had our challenges and our good things that have happened, and being about personal branding, I get quite personal, and that's a bit that I was most nervous about, but the feedback I've had is that that's the most valuable bit. And it's quite interesting, isn't it? Is if you be a bit vulnerable, share a few things, it's not just business advice. It's now, they can really resonate and understand why and how we do things. So it's been pretty cool.
I love it. Creating a powerful business. I recommend everyone to get a hold of it. We'll of course include the details in the show notes of how to get a hold of those things. And just to wrap things up, is I know we kind of danced around this idea of e-attraction, which is what we've been talking about, and I'm wanting to tie that into the question that I ask everyone at the end of the podcast, which is, what is the aha moment that people have when they start working with you? And I gather that some of that idea of that e-attraction that we've started talking about is where it happens, where the magic happens.
Yeah, I think and generally in our workshops, everyone has at least one aha moment of like, I didn't realize I was doing it wrong. And it's the personalization, but it's less is more. Like, we find people get so wrapped up in doing so many things and they don't have just a simple process of how do we talk to our right customer. They don't have it. They've overcomplicated. There's 24 steps. I'm like, we don't need that. And so we actually power it back. We go, delete that system, stop paying for this, do this. And we make a nice, simple, robust, repeatable process. Because if you can't do it simply and repeatably, it's not working. If there's 24 steps in the process, how do you know which bit's not working if it's not working? So we simplify it, and they're just like, because it's like, I don't need to be an expert in every CRM and a click funnel and this content engine and meta. And they go, no. You just do these 4 things and you'll get clients. And they're like, and it's, and it works, And then we can add some things into automate, but not until you've got it working. Why automate something that doesn't work,
Very, very true. Andrew, thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you. So many valuable things in there. So many more things that we can talk about. So we'll make another time to do it again in a future episode. But for now, thank you so much for being part of Biz Bites.
Mate, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.